Hello, my name is Brant Hunt. I am discerning what is true tonight, and what I'm going to be sharing with you is a book called The End of All Evil. And just bear with me as I get to the right area. So this is chapter one. Chapter one is called Freedom. The particular writer was named Jeremy Locke, Locke. The book was written in 2005. The chapters will deal with what we call freedom. Chapter 2 would be earth. 3 would be authority. 4th would be culture. 5th would be tactics. 6 would be democracy. 7 would be economics. 8 would be the pattern of liberty. And 9 is end of evil. So let's get to the point here and start reading it. Chapter 1, freedom. The definition of freedom is infinite value of the human being. The definition of evil is the destruction of freedom. Everything that is evil teaches people that they have limited value. Simple. Truth is always simple. All people recognize truth because all people are intelligent beings. It is the nature of evil to create artificial complex ideas. It does this to hide or obfuscate the freedom it destroys. If you remove the complexities and fears from your life, you will find a plain and beautiful truth. This truth is the nature of your worth. Value of man. To understand freedom is to understand the value of a person. Everything that evil wants is to disguise and destroy your value. All authority is created by evil men to disguise your worth. To understand your own worth is to understand the nature of liberty. Evil. The crucial key for understanding our world is to understand the nature of evil. Evil challenges the value of people by denying them the opportunity to make their own choices, by denying them the chance to grow strong in learning and understanding. Freedom. While evil seeks to destroy or hide a person's worth, freedom shows humans their full potential and their full value. With freedom, people have love, cure disease, remove hunger, ease labor, and live in peace. With freedom, happiness is possible. Freedom is the exact opposite of evil. You. Everything written in this book is written to destroy the idea of culture and law. The lessons of this book is simple. Nothing on earth is more valuable than you. Chapter 2. Earth. There's a dark conspiracy which has clouded the minds of humanity throughout all ages. The conspiracy is evil incarnate and controls vast mountains of human emotions, work, thought, and speech. It has been responsible for the deaths of hundreds and hundreds of millions and the slavery of every being who has ever lived. If you can accept the single principle that you have infinite worth, then this book will give you the vision necessary to see the world as it truly is, to know once and for all that the dark conspiracy is not strong, but weak, that evil is not growing, but dying. Principle versus law. To understand how evil controls people, it is necessary to understand the difference between principle and law. A principle is a truth that creates freedom. A law is a lie that creates slavery. Principles describe reality. They are knowledge that helps you to make use of your world because of your intelligence. You recognize principles in everything you do. Every true thing you learn is a principle. The movements of your hands, which foods taste good, mathematics, and empathy for a friend are all based on principles. Laws are artificial, ideas created by evil men to restrict the thinking and understanding of people. Laws mask themselves in authority so that they can impersonate principles. When people mistake law for principles, their freedom is restricted. When people mistake truth for the idea of authority, their abilities and their wisdom are diminished. This is the purpose of law. An example of a principle can be found in thermodynamics. A liquid is cool. The liquid is cooler than a gas. This is a principle because this is a principle. It does not restrict us, but enables us. Using this principle, we can condense and expand a substance between gas and liquid to create refrigeration. With this principle, we have more understanding and more power. Principles are truths that create freedom. An example of a law can be found in the culture of royalty. A commoner owes homage to the king. This is a law, because this is a law. It destroys freedom and enslaves. You see, under this law, a person must neglect uses of their minds, their speech, and their actions. They must believe that they are worth less than the king. Notice that unlike principle, there is no truth in law. It is entirely possible to disrespect the king and therefore to break the law. Law must be enforced because there is no truth in it. A law destroys freedom because it is a lie. A principle, however, creates freedom because it is knowledge. That which destroys freedom is evil. Simplicity. The word is simpler than it pretends. Complexities are found in every aspect of our culture, politics, and economics. Everyday people are introduced to new ideas, new spin, new views on new symptoms of our world. Many of these ideas are perversions of principle, designed to engineer specific reaction from people. Evil societies invent ideas to destroy the free thinking of people. Some of history's names for these ideas have been socialism, fascism, racism, communism, democracy, class warfare, political correctness, propriety, decency, royalty, and terrorism. All of these ideas are created for exactly the same purpose. They are all vehicles to confuse the minds of the victims of slavery. They are all evil. You are capable of understanding everything in the world around you. Your intelligence is not limited. Distortions and complexities are introduced into your understanding so that evil men can control you. Evil wants you to believe that you are incapable of understanding your own world. When you understand the magnitude of your own worth, evil will fall. There are two principles relevant to understanding the concept of intelligence. The first is simplicity. The principle of simplicity states that intelligence recognizes truth. When any truth is presented in pure form, all people are capable of understanding it. There is no truth that you cannot learn. That is the principle of simplicity, that intelligence recognizes truth. The second principle is the principle of obfuscation. Obfuscation is a distortion of principle. Obfuscation is the creation of false ideas in order to hide truth. Sometimes this is simply adding ideas on top of truth to disguise the nature of the original truth. Even ideas that seem entirely appropriate can be used to bury simple truths. Obfuscation is used by evil to confuse the minds of people. Obfuscation distorts principles so that people will be unable to learn. Evil uses obfuscation so that you will be unable to gain wisdom. It does this to limit your freedom. Culture knows that people will discover fewer truths if they are focused on the artificial complexities. As children grow, they learn that seemingly complex ideas are actually basic and simple principles. What might have seemed impossible to understand at one point becomes wonderfully once understood. It is good to gain wisdom. With wisdom, you can do anything. Your search for knowledge will become easier for you as you shed any notion of your own inferiority. Evil uses obfuscation to make people feel inferior. You're not inferior to other people, and you're not inferior to ideas. You have infinite worth. Next, who you are. As a human being, you are very special. You are unlike the minerals, plants, or the animals of Earth. Nothing commands the abilities of intelligence like you. Nothing else has such complete and total ambition to satisfy dreams. Nothing else has the desire of the thirst for knowledge that you possess. You are a human being. There is no limit to your nature. There is no end to your capacity for understanding or for your happiness. As a human being, your life is not subject to any will except your own. You require no permission, favor, or license to learn and grow. Anything that you desire can be yours. People naturally seek happiness in their lives, and the most common and deepest desire is for the love and strength of their families. Everything you do enhances security, peace, and prosperity for you. and yourself and those you love. Your ability to create these things from desires of your heart is properly defined as faith. With faith, you will find joy in every walk of your life. Next section, faith. Faith is the courage to test ideas for truth. With faith, people discover whether ideas are true or false. With faith, people learn principles. People use faith to take steps in testing principles. We often fail, but we always learn. Imagine walking over a rocky surface. Perhaps you expect that the surface is solid and will not shift. If you expected firm ground but found movement, you may stumble. When the ideas you are testing are wrong, your test will fail. Your intelligence helps you to adjust your thinking to better understand the principles of walking. You learn to control your balance in spite of the difficult terrain. You use faith to test your new understanding and soon can traverse successfully and quickly. You are mastering principles. Anytime human beings put principles into action, they will feel power, excitement, and joy. Or a little child proudly showing his parents that he has learned to tie his shoes, or a student mastering the understanding of mathematics, or a husband and wife resolving an argument. These are the discoveries of principles by the test of faith. The application of faith to principle brings wisdom. Freedom is necessary. The destruction of freedom prevents people from using faith. It prevents people from testing their understanding of principles. When we are not free to take steps, we cannot learn and we cannot grow. Let me say that again. When we are not free to take steps, we cannot learn and we cannot grow. Love, prosperity, and knowledge are all things that are only possible with freedom. Freedom brings everything good. As a human being, the degree of freedom that you require is infinite. Freedom is the infinite value of the human being. If evil destroys freedom in any area of your life, it can limit your wisdom, your love, and your joy. Next section. Danger. There are people who will destroy your freedom. They want to control you so that you cannot become the person you want to be. In order to control you, they use force to take away the liberty that you were born with. You must never underestimate the prowess or cruelty of evil people. Evil will confiscate money, destroy virtue, and spill blood. Most people are not evil. Most people try to create, not to destroy. However, evil people do exist, and they are extremely dangerous. They are called authority. Next section is authority. There is no authority on earth that can rightfully govern your life. Born to this world, you and you alone control your eyes, your ears, your tongues, your hands, and your mind. All authority which claims to be able to dispose of you and your abilities is deceit. You are born to this world so that you might have the free agency of life. Life is liberty. With liberty and faith in this world, you can learn and do anything. Anyone that tells you that you must yield your mind, your body, or your possessions to authority is evil. Understand that choices made of your own free will are not evil. There is nothing wrong with sacrifice if it is made willingly, but sacrifice without choice is not sacrifice, it is slavery. Authority always places the man on people by force. Authority never asks permission. Obscured. The simplest authorities are common thieves. They use distortion or stealth to confiscate things that you value. They can steal money, virtue through rape, or life through murder. By their actions, they are teaching you that your worth is inferior to theirs. The tool of their authority is violence. There are other, far more powerful authorities in your everyday life. They are dramatically more dangerous, more profitable, and more subtle. They teach you through distorted ideas that you are not capable of worthy of living free. Authorities teach that other people can manage your life better than you can. Let's say that again, folks, because you need to get this through your head. Authorities teach that other people can manage your life better than you can. With a callous disregard for your worth, you are commanded to behave according to someone else's idea. The height of the danger can be seen in the extent to which these commands are commonly accepted as good. We know them as cultural. You will find some subterfuge everywhere you have value in your life. If something is valuable to you, you can be sure that someone somewhere is willing to take it from you. While they bear the same evil as the common thief, the methods of sophisticated culture are normally much, much, much more powerful. Evil. Evil is destruction of freedom. It cannot be stated more simply. Everywhere you look, you find the obfuscation of evil. There are countless ideas which are taught about the nature of evil. Every false idea is created by evil to hide truth from you. Evil is not darkness and is not a frightening unknown. Evil is not some mystical psychology of man, nor is it inherited in our natures. It is not supernatural, and it most definitely exists. As with all principles, the principle of evil is simple. Evil is the destruction of freedom. When free, you can build glory, peace, prosperity, and joy in this world. Around you, you will find all these things. Men and women like you build these things. Evil enslaves. Evil is found in words such as force, compulsion, tax, violence, theft, censor, and politics. Notice that in such things there is no joy. None have any value to humanity. Next section. Control. Evil seeks to be a master over you. Evil wants you to be a slave. When we consider as real slavery is indeed only one form of slavery. The African slaves in the United States were compelled to work and toil for other people's benefit. Their lives were mostly controlled for the benefits of their master, but they had some very limited freedoms. Some were able to create distinct traditions and maintain families. They did their best to build joy in their lives despite the tyranny wrought upon them. Because they were in control of portions of their lives, were they free? How much freedom does a person deserve? How much freedom can how much freedom can be destroyed before we recognize that it is evil? Slavery is not a concept of totality. Slavery exists whenever the freedom of man is destroyed. Theft and bullying are slaves. In history, African natives, Jews, and many others have experienced a lifetime of slavery. The ultimate slavery is murder. Slavery stops people from being able to make choices for their own lives. Everything that restricts your mind, your movements, and your speech is evil. Slavery is found in both the partial and complete destruction of freedom. Evil compels you to behave in a manner that do not benefit you or those you love. Culture and law exercise overwhelming force in the name of propriety and public good. They destroy freedom and put human lives under other people's control. Chapter 3. Authority. You were born to this world with sovereignty over your mind and over your life. Your abilities to think, to feel, to learn, and to love are your liberty. In you, these capacities are infinite. You have infinite worth. Evil seeks to destroy your liberty. It seeks to be in authority over you. It does not want you to have liberty. Evil seeks to destroy you so that it can use you as a puppet. The implementation of evil is called authority. Authorities are what evil implements as it exercises control over the lives of people. Authority limits your ability to learn, to think, to feel, to love, and to grow. This is why authority is evil. Authorities are not accidents. They are specifically created by intelligent people to control you. There are two tools that evil makes use of in order to accomplish this. Both tools destroy freedom. They are cultural and violence. Each of these tools of authority have weapons which are used to attack your liberty. The weapons of violence are theft, imprisonment, torture, rape, and death. The weapons of culture are law and the control of speech. Evil is implemented by force in the lives of people. Evil wants you to obey its authority. It uses the weapons of violence on everyone who will not obey. It uses the weapons of culture to sustain whatever obedience it manages to achieve. Next section, violence. Your physical body allows you to exercise principles over every aspect of reality. With it, you have the tools necessary to interact with the physical world. Physicality greatly enables you. It is a gift of pure freedom. People obey authority when they are subject to violence. That's the threat, you see. People do things wrong because they're threatened that they may be beat up or hurt or thrown in jail. Violence threatens your physical body. It threatens your interaction with the physical world. People who are subject to violence are compelled to obey because they want to protect the freedom that their bodies bring to them. Pain and mutilation limits your ability to interact with your world. Death destroys your freedom completely. The lie of tyranny is that you will maintain the freedom of life by obeying authority. The choices it offers you are a lifetime of obedience or death. Evil is the master of deceit. The objective of evil is not violence, but obedience. The purpose of violence is to compel obedience. Its design is the destruction of freedom. Whether submitting to authority and obeying or allowing it to destroy you physically, you will have lost your freedom. The only way to maintain freedom is to fight tyranny at all times and at all costs. Perspective. The cultures of earth offer their people different moralities. Perverted definitions of good and evil are found everywhere on the planet. In one culture, a thing is proper. In another, it is taboo. In one culture, a word is egregious. In another, is a not. Criminal acts are defined entirely different in opposing cultures. When authority is established among people, evil is either obvious to see or nearly impossible to see, depending entirely upon whether or not you are a part of its culture. Even though few people are able to recognize the oppression found in their own cultures, culture is still oppression. Most people question in horror how an average German soldier could himself participate in murder of other people. Most people question in horror how millions of average people under the umbrella of communism would bring their brothers certain death at the hands of police. The examples in history are more than plentiful. They exist in every culture, every design. Culture maintains a death grip upon the nature of man. It is not true that history's villains misuse authority. The truth is that they follow the object and design of authority perfectly. Tyranny is always disguised as culture and law. Next section, authority principle. The authority principle describes the behavior of people who live under the rule of law. The authority principle shows that people obey anything and anyone that they believe is in authority. Though the who, the why, and the what have changed in history, the behavior of people is the same. They obey. When people are taught that obedience is principle, they obey. When they are taught that the sources of worth and knowledge is found in another person rather than themselves, they obey. This is the rule of law, and it teaches people that their will is subjected to the will of law and those who control the law. Examples of authorities are governments, bullies, mafias, thieves, and kings. People obey authority in their lives either out of fear of violence or because culture conditions them to accept obedience as proper and good. Authorities always use both tools. The most successful authorities do not have to use violence as often because of the strength of their cultures. Both culture and violence enforce authority. Under authority, people have obeyed law to the atrocities of history. The murders, raping, and looting of under chieftains, kings, emperors, communism, and Nazis were not perpetrated by small groups of men. They were performed by thousands and even millions of people. These people would not have committed such egregious evils on their own. If a random person had commanded them, they would have refused. So why, at the behest of a perceived authority, do they obey? Obedience to authority is the authority principle. People will obey authority no matter what it asks of them. They obey because they have been lied to. They have been falsely taught that principle is found in law. In history, it is difficult to imagine why some cultures are so much more violently depraved than others. Authority is the reason. Cultures with the least influential authority are the most peaceful, and by definition, the most free. Cultures with the most influential authorities are the most violent, and by definition, slaves. Anytime you are compelled to act in obedience to authority, you are being influenced by this principle. Evil uses the authority principle to condition people to obey without questioning what, why, or whom they are obeying. Destroying your identity to gain power over you is the modus operandi of evil. Pattern of tyranny. Tyranny is disguised as culture and law. Everything that evil seeks is the destruction of freedom, to destroy the value of people. The pattern of tyranny is simple. The object is to enslave the minds of the people by creating a culture of obedience. To gain obedience of people, there is a process that must be taken. This process is the pattern of tyranny. War. Before authority can be established, war must take place. War is the implementation of violence. It is the tool that evil uses to establish authority. All of history's wars have occurred because of a desire to implement a new authority over people. On the smallest scale, this occurs via a process of threat and acquisition, such as the behavior of bullies, thugs, and mafias. On the larger scale, it occurs in a violent multi-year battle, such as the behavior of nations and in empires. Next section, enemies. In order to offer people escape from violence, new authorities teach people that obedience will end war. The design of authority is obedience. Authorities condition people to obedience by promising to promote them from dangerous enemies. Theocratics have used as enemy of blasphemy. The Nazis used a certain group. Communists used the rich. Many enemies have been created, but by far the most common is anarchy. Protection. In order to engineer a culture and pervert the free thinking of men, evil must create an enemy. It is not important to tyrants who the enemy is. Tyrants often offer protection from these enemies in exchange for obedience. Take careful note that they offer protection, but obedience is mandatory. Whether or not you wish to have the authority over you, you will obey or they will revert to violence. Either do what I say or else. The enemies are only created to ease the burden of obedience from the minds of people. Cultural enemies are an illusion. You see. Protection. In order to engineer a culture and pervert the free thinking of men, evil must create an enemy. It is not important to tyrants who the enemy is. Tyrants often protection from these enemies in exchange for obedience. Take careful note that they offer protection, but again, obedience is mandatory. Whether or not you wish to have the authority over you, you will obey or they will revert to violence. The enemies are the only created to ease the burden of obedience from the minds of people. Cultural enemies are illusion. Benjamin Franklin taught that those who give up liberty to gain security will soon have neither. And that's what's occurring for the last, well, it's been very blatant in the last 30 years, folks. Very blatant here in the United States. This is not an idle observation. The pattern of tyranny clearly shows that the entire purpose of presenting you with the need for security is to convince you to yield your liberty. That is everything authority wants. The demand for security is raised by those who seek power over you. This is how they create enemies. Make no mistake, it isn't the enemy that tyrants are after. They are after you. The illusion of cultural enemies is designed to restrict the thinking of people. It is designed to convince people that the real enemy is not the evil that rules over them, but some imaginary demon that would do them harm. This is the lie of tyranny. It requires your obedience in order to save you. Tyranny is disguised as culture and law. You know, the boogeyman in the cave, the craziness, you see. Well, we got to go over there and destroy these countries because they may harm us when they never have harmed us in the first place. You see how they do this, folks? Social proof. As people begin to submit under the duress of violence to the will of a new authority, a principle known as social proof enters culture. The more people that obey the new authority, the more likely it is that others will follow. The normacy of obedience becomes a part of everyday life. It is natural to want to escape the violence of another. It is natural to want to escape the violence of authority. People who live under the oppression of nations or thugs will inevitably accept the offer of obedience. A mugger will offer not to shoot if a wallet is surrendered. Rapists offer not to kill if virtue is surrendered. Mafias offer not to torture if payment is made. Governments offer not to obliterate life if laws are obeyed. The offer is sweetened with the illusion of enemies when a person faces certain pain or death on one hand or protection from an enemy on the other. The will to remain free that is, the will to remain free will eventually break down. Laws. Laws are decreed and written to legitimize obedience. Laws impersonate principle. People are taught that what is law is right. They're not taught to do what is right, but to obey what is law. The legitimacy of law is the object of culture. Culture uses law to distort the minds of people into believing that they are incapable of seeking truth or living in peace. It teaches that law is legitimate instead of one's own mind. Control of speech. The most fundamental weapon of culture is the control of speech. While history has shown violent examples of this weapon exists in every culture as a code of propriety. This objective of the control of speech is making sure that those who were compelled to bend to the will of authority never gain the courage to look back. In order to maintain obedience, culture demands that everyone is enslaved, enforce its will upon those around them. It teaches people to call their recalcitrated neighbors weird or insane. It demands that every person turn on those who fail to obey the precepts of culture. Culture condemns as immoral and antisocial all those who fail to obey its precepts. In this way, culture shapes people's minds by restricting their speech. Further, culture endows its evangelists with adjectives such as noble and upstanding. Those who most closely follow the rules of culture, especially in condemning enemies, are rewarded for inflicting stigma upon their less willing to obey. It is this devaluation of the human spirit that proves the evil of cultural norms. Those who exhibit recalcitrations or suggest rebellion against authority ostracized, berated, and demonized. It is hard to endure the loneliness associated with fitting outside of popular culture. This is how the control of speech is a weapon designed to break the spirit of man. It is a weapon designed to compel you to obedience. Once the people under a culture begin to enforce the control of speech upon each other, authority has been established, folks. It now rules the very people who enforces its power. This is design of culture, and authority can now do with you as it pleases. Enforcement. There are times when authority must revert to violence in order to maintain obedience. There will always be a small minority who refuses to obey the tenets of cultural law. Because of this, authorities employ a constant stream of violence known as law enforcement or police. These are not police in the defense of liberty, but police in the defense of authority. Okay, I'm going to read this again. These are not police in the defense of liberty, but police in the defense of authority. Cultures always teach that liberty and authority are one and the same. The design of police is to wield the weapons of violence in the preservation of authority, not to defend liberty. Authority must also employ violence when culture breaks down. Throughout history, people have slowly and steadily learned more and more about their own worth and hence demanded more and more freedom. Different cultures have fallen as people realize their culture is a lie. When cultures begin to break down, it's because people are learning about their value. Such cultures and the authorities they protect are doomed. Never once in history has a culture in decline been redeemed. Say it again. Never once in history has a culture in decline been redeemed. When authorities see that their culture is being dismantled and obedience is no longer theirs to enjoy, they return to violence. These return to violence are historically extremely brutal. The violence enforcement of law is a sign of coming liberty. Example. Take a look at the generic historical example of the pattern of tyranny. A rogue thug gathers together a band of men to extort money from the people nearby where he lives. In his success, he plunders massive amounts of money and grows his gang into an army. He successfully kills the previous officers of law and enforcement, or subverts them through stealth, knowing that he can plunder more value in the long term if he leaves his victims alive. He implements a tax upon everyone in his range of influence. He draws borders. He gives decrees. Importantly, he promises the victim that he will protect them from all other thugs. His victims slowly become accustomed to his will and his lies. The people become afraid if they hear their neighbors talk of escaping the taxes or cruelty. Soon they actively support the regime by targeting all treasonous speech and turning in deviants to police. Originally called criminal, the thug now is called the authority. He's called law and order. The examples could have easily described any gang of barbarians from the Middle Ages or from ancient history. It could apply to any king or emperor of years past. It could have described any warlord or today or any mafia. In fact, it closely resembles every authority that has ever been established. Once people are conditioned to accept the notion of authority, they normally obey without thinking. The object of law is obedience, and the destruction of freedom is found in the blindness of disobedience. The authority principle shows that even when a person would normally believe an action to be wrong, if ordered by authority, they will still perform it. The establishment and the exercise of authority over people is called the pattern of tyranny. Socialism and communism create the enemy of greed in the same pattern by controlling speech. Profit becomes a dirty word, even though it only means that you have labored to create a better life. Money becomes evil, even though it simply represents your work, which is obvious moral. They created the enemy, but it is not greed. They are all after it is you. If they can convince you that your money and your labors are the enemy, then you will yield those labors and your money to them. Authority is not designated to destroy the enemy, it is designated to enslave you. Democracies create the enemies of anarchy in the same pattern by controlling speech. It becomes immoral to suggest that one could break the law. It does not matter which law or what it says. Nobility is placed on the payment of taxes, no matter how much they demand of you. It is the highest form of cultural propriety to obey the law, regardless of what it says. The enemy is the fictional anarchy, wherein no individual is safe because everyone is a tyrant. In order to save you from anarchy, you yield authority to the law, that is, you obey. Evil is not after the destruction of anarchy, it is after you. If you can see the tyranny in a culture that demands that you obey, no matter what is asked of you, and no matter who writes the laws, then you are beginning to understand the nature of evil. Everything that is evil teaches you that you have limited worth. Rule of law. You hear this enormously from politicians and government. That's my point. You hear it all the time. You heard it from George Bush. Not the law of the jungle, but rule of law. It's the single most dangerous idea ever inflicted upon mankind. It has gone by countless names throughout the ages of history. In more basic tribes, it is known as respect for elders, and in the tyranny of royalty, it is known as nobility, birthright, and divinity. In communists, it is known as the supremacy of the state. In dictatorships, it is known as the antidote to anarchy. In theocracies, it is known as revelation. And that teaching of this idea is that you are to obey the law, not because of its merits or its morality. You are to obey only because it is the law. Yes, very much so. That's why you have, issues about certain things where I live at in the state of South Carolina. They just simply say you obey because it's the law. It doesn't have anything to do with what's right or wrong. You are to obey only because it is the law. It is assumed that even a law is wrong, then it is right to follow because it supports the system, and the system is more important than you. In order for an intelligent person to choose what is right, they must know who is asking obedience of them. They must consider why is it being asked or what it is they are being asked to do. Only then can they decide for themselves if it is right. This is not what authority wants. Authority is not concerned with you doing what is right. It is only concerned with your obedience. Culture teaches that the nature of the law and what it asks you to do are irrelevant. Culture teaches that obedience is propriety. Culture teaches that when law is created, it becomes morality. You see, law is the weapon. It is used by evil to attack its prey, whether in the name of the duty to king, loyalty to state, or rule of law. Law is a weapon used to extort and control. Culture upholds the nobility of law. Culture teaches that law is proper and good. It never questions who wrote the law, or the tyrant, and brother are the same. Culture never questions whether or not the law is right. You are to obey no matter what it says. In this fashion, law is a powerful weapon to be used against you. All principalities create volumes of laws that take lifetimes to understand and armies of lawyers to manipulate. All of these things are weapons in the hands of the powerful, which they will use at your expense. Law holds value only to those who create it, and only because your culture demands that you obey it. The purest invitation to tyranny is your commitment to obey laws regardless of what it says against you. The law becomes the perfect weapon. Whomever controls the law controls you. Your worth is measured by the extent of your obedience. Chapter 4, Cultural. Let's see how far I've got here. I don't want to see what I've got here. Bear with me just a second. Yeah, I'm gonna end right now and take a break. It's about 45 minutes, and then I'll come back. Again, this is a book that I found. It's The End of All Evil, and we're probably about a third of the way tonight. I wanted to read this book because I just thought it was very important. It's very basic. Unfortunately, I don't think many people understand what really is going on, and they need to know. So we'll be back in a little bit, okay? Thank you for your attention. And thank you for listening. Take care.